Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Monday, September 7th, 2020. It's Labor Day, so I figured we would labor. I'm not certain if I have that whole way of celebrating the holiday correct. I'm not sure. It's usually some sort of sale going on. You know how it goes. All right, of course, we pondered this for a little bit. Should we be off for the day, honoring those who have labored to build this country, or should we be doing their work for them, or should we be entertaining them while they have the day off? Do they even have the day off anymore? I don't, I'm not even sure how popular it is for actual laborers to get, or it's very popular for actual laborers to get the day off. I don't know how widespread is the observance, let's say, of Labor Day by the bosses. It's not Bosses Day, and every day is Bosses Day. They used to say, just like they used to do with Kids Day, but then they actually made a Bosses Day. I have noticed that has shown up on, like, the Hallmark calendar, if not necessarily. It might actually be on my all-purpose calendar out there, too, but I guess they had to go out and invent that one, too, because they were whining from the back seat about of the limo. When was Bosses Day? So, anyway, we don't have that today. It's Labor Day. I thought we might spend a few minutes getting some stories together for you. A few things happened over the weekend. The president, crazy a-hole and hates veterans. It's not Veterans Day yet. That's going to be something when Veterans Day rolls around. Of course, we'll all be locked away in a COVID quarantine, so there won't be that much to do for Veterans Day, except scoff at the president's false piety when that comes around. But Labor Day, well, let's see, Veterans Day, I guess, will come post-election day, so we might have something to celebrate in that anyway. So let's see. Plenty to round up. The president spent the day moaning and groaning and golfing, as usual. Greg Dworkin will be back on the air for the first time since the rest of us saw the latest in the I Hate Veterans story. Many of us would have spotted this beforehand, but all of America is called for that sort of voice, I think. All of America was talking over the weekend and Friday, included about the Atlantic article, and Greg will get a chance to chime in on that one and tell us what else he might be considering. I see the roundup of stories is accumulating in Skype. So we have that set. So we won't be meandering aimlessly as the video now in circulation, though I understand it's an old video, of Donald Trump shows. I suppose you might have seen this thing over the weekend, too, that the Trump war room, such as it is, was accusing, as usual, doing all the projection that they usually do, accusing Joe Biden of somehow not being mentally fit for the job, and that he was meandering through the churchyard after leaving services yesterday. Of course, Donald Trump was meandering at the golf course rather than doing his godly best to save the world over at whatever church it is he decides sometimes to attend. Though not necessarily the one he gasses people to get them out of the way, but although that's the church that has been at least as often attended as any other for Donald Trump. All right, well, ready to roll for our day. As a matter of fact, Bill is up and ready today, too. I was wondering whether he was going to take today off, but he has awoken to join the rest of you to let you know that Daily Coast Radio is live now, and today, Kagro X, me, David Waldman, has a special gift. Ooh, I better go get one. Hold on, I'll be right back. Run out the door and go get one. David Waldman has a special gift for all the moms having kids on this Labor Day, the other most favorite kind of labor for everybody out there, I'm sure. Let's see, what's the gift? I better find out. A carton of unfiltered... this is another interesting thing. Now, here in America, when we are referring to Pallmall, we're usually talking about the cigarettes, and I guess we here say, I don't really know. Have you ever heard anybody say it out loud? I've never heard anybody actually go to wherever, and the tobacconist the supermarket, the gas station, the discount tobacco outlet, which you see occasionally around here, and ask for carton or pack of what we would say as like Pall Malls, but in England is pronounced something closer to Pall Mall, and surprises them every time when they hear about those things. I'm just curious about what Americans say about this. But also, more importantly, I think, than even this, because you can get any sort of discount cigarette you like. But you got to have the case of Schlitz that goes along with it. And for convenience, if you have one of those giant cup holders, if you'd prefer the 40-ounce bottles, that's fine too. I can get you one of those. Go conquer the world, kiddos. This is a healthy breakfast for you. Lots of fiber in the carton, I guess, from the cigarettes, and unfiltered too. We like it old school around here. Anyway, yes, as far as the stories of the day, well, like I said, Greg's piling them up over here. I can share with you, by the way, good note, to show you the video of him meandering around, making the rounds yesterday. Tom Joseph, who tweets as Tom J. Chicago, tweeting this one around. He is an amateur collector, or maybe he's professional at this point, a collector really of video and photographic evidence of what he claims is the president's advancing dementia. I'm not a doctor and can't diagnose him remotely, or maybe I'm released from the prohibition against diagnosing him remotely. I'm not really sure. I'll have to look into that, because we'll get a lawyer to help us with that one, because though I am one of those, you don't do your own work, basically. Always have somebody double check. But he's a collector of all this video and photographic evidence that he says points to at least mental decline, if not outright dementia, in Donald Trump. And this little piece is him wandering around. I guess he is being asked questions by the press pool on his way to Marine One. And I understand there's some background to this. What you see in the video is him waving goodbye to them and then wandering off onto the grass as though headed toward Marine One, but then turning sharply to his left and looping around backwards until he comes to the edge of the grass and a footpath where there is a puddle in his way, and he just sort of stops. And it's not like as it turns out, he's not a horse that refuses to cross water or anything like that. Apparently, the clip is about a year old, and the excuse is, well, one way of putting it is he's waiting for Melania to exit the White House and join him, and she hasn't showed up yet. Now, that could mean anything. Another way of explaining it has been, he realizes on halfway to the helicopter he forgot his wife and turns around and goes back. But it's not looking good, quite honestly. But as it turns out, not only apologists, but people trying to put proper context on things will point this out. But yeah, the war room over on the Trump side was insisting that Biden, because he refused to stop and talk to the press, which was calling to him from across the churchyard, and in fact, the church graveyard, asking him to come to them and answer questions. I guess they got miffed that he didn't answer questions, and the Trump war room took advantage of it, saying like he was supposed to go and talk to the press, but instead he meandered off in another direction. Of course, there's some context there, too. It turns out in the churchyard is where his son Beau is buried, and he might have preferred to go there. And really, honestly, even if that wasn't the place, if he decided to go to his car instead of talking to the press, walking with purpose toward where you're going is sort of the opposite of meandering. Anyway, this is now meandering, and it's time to stop it and let Greg do his own meandering, although it appears to be slightly more organized. Good morning, Greg.
Hey, good morning.
Hi. I see you've got a long list of items. You haven't had a chance to opine on the show yet about the Trump veterans explosion, but I don't know if that's up for you today or not. I'll skip it through.
Absolutely.
I'm sure I've got to be there, but I see what's up at top.
Yep. So
Okay.
I got to talk about that, but we got to start with a couple of things. Just
All right.
some good news. This is from Tom Boner, I guess it pronounces his name
I bet
that way, because he says in his Twitter feed,
Yeah.
my name makes you laugh. So
All right.
2.78 million Americans under the age of 25 have registered to vote so far in 2020, and their registration rate is surging as we approach the election In August, more than 1 in 3 of new registrants were under the age of 25.
Okay.
So he's looking at it month by month, age 18 to 24, and the new registrants, 34% of them in the month of August.
What, 4%?
3-4. 34.
Okay. Hey, all right.
So that's pretty good. So I sent that along to John Della Volpe, who is the pollster at the Institute of Politics that studies the Ute vote.
Institute of Politics.
Actually, the way he describes himself
thing.
as a pollster studying young voters since I was one.
Oh, nice.
So, it's good. He does the twice annual or semi-annual youth vote poll, and we know that younger voters really don't like Donald Trump and they're very into the environment, and that may be part of the secret weapon that people have for this election. So my list isn't as long as usual. So that's one thing I wanted to start with. The other thing, of course, and this doesn't have long-term significance, but it's fresh, so it's just funny.
Okay.
And that, of course, is the Lake Travis, Austin, Texas boat parade for Trump, which sunk at least 5 boats.
Yeah.
The big boats sunk the little boats. It essentially is what happened. But
What happened
somebody
to
put
lifting
together
all
this
boats?
really funny graphic that I sent along to you of one of those classic statues of Poseidon standing in the lake with everybody sinking. And with the same graphics, with the same sort of type font, wrote Poseidon for Biden. And, if the gods are on your side, you're really going to do fairly well, I think, in November.
Yeah, it's looking good for him. All right, I like the Poseidon for Biden. That's nice.
Apologies to Gordon Lightfoot. The title for my pundit roundup was The Wreck of the Austin Trump Herald. And, I think there's a lot going on there. People are just writing all sorts of stuff. Obviously, the hashtag that goes along with this is Dumbkirk.
Yeah, I love that one.
D-U-M-B, which everybody's using. But also 3-hour tour.
I wonder how long that whole thing actually took. I understand. So, 5 boats there sank. There was another boat parade elsewhere where a boat caught on fire, which is pretty. The metaphors
these
are
things
just
happen. So
too much.
It just you get carried away. The bottom line is that a lot of things seem to be going wrong for the Trump campaign. Yes. And one of the interesting things that's going wrong, we'll get to the military stuff and the actual substance of things, is the finance aspect of it. You can look at Louis DeJoy, who is, of course, one of the triumvirate that was part of the RNC financial heads, along with Michael Cohen, who spent some time in jail, and Brody, I think, who is going to spend some time in jail. So they're all crooks. But Louis DeJoy was caught pushing his employees at a private company to donate to Trump, and then I guess he was reimbursing them with bonuses, which means that they were taking private money and sending it to Trump, and then he was reimbursing them with company money.
Yes, fun. Illegal,
and
but fun.
I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on the internet, but that doesn't sound legal.
Right. It would be what we would call illegal. Illegal is the opposite of legal.
Poorly legal.
Yes. Although I did see it pointed out.
Illegal.
Apparently, if I read the story, if I read the story, I would know the answer. But if I had read the story correctly, I would know the real answer for sure. I skimmed it, and I don't know if he was reimbursing people for donations to Trump, but to other Republican candidates.
Well, Tom Tillis took a lot of them.
Yes, he did. And then everyone was circulating this great footage of DeJoy's appearance before Congress, in which he was asked directly by Jim Cooper from Tennessee, basically he knew the story. Did you reimburse employees for contributions to Trump? And DeJoy angrily denies this and says, I resent the implication, blah, 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 and says no. And everybody thought, everybody said, we're going to nail him on perjury. And then somebody pointed out, the question is about donating to Trump. And he might not have necessarily have done that for Trump.
Right,
So
he might have just done it for the GOP.
So pretty interesting. It doesn't
so
matter. It's still illegal.
that's going on. So we got the boats that sunk. We got the joy. But the bigger picture for money is we know that Biden raised, something like $350 million in the month of August?
Something like that.
How much did Trump raise?
I don't think he got any money whatsoever.
Well, that may be, because nobody knows. First of all, they haven't set it out in terms of what he actually raised.
Right. And it means different things to him. Raise. Like, what do you mean, raise the money? I took it.
Well, but the other side of the coin,
so that's good,
is that there was a story in the Washington Post about him diverting a lot of the money to pay his legal fees.
Yes, awesome.
And the third
story.
side of the coin
is
that he's going dark in Arizona. I mean, what if the guy's just out of money because he stole it all? It would be irresponsible not to speculate, but he's not telling us and he's not showing us.
That is true and wrong, and he was supposed to report, and, there's a law or something, so that's not happening.
Laws for little kids.
Suckers, losers,
Exactly. So, we have all of that. And meanwhile, the polling just rolls on. CBS YouGov yesterday has Biden up by 10. Basically the awesome. 7.4 steady national poll aggregate from 538 still rolls on.
Okay.
And Wisconsin plus 6 in the YouGov poll. Mm-hmm. And today's Monday, so on Wednesday we have the MU Law poll coming out, which I believe had a 6-point or 5-point lead, depending upon how you look at it. Last time they did it, 538 has 1 point lower, but Charles Franklin corrected that and said they took the wrong part of the poll to report. It's actually a point higher than that. So the question is going to be, are things really changing or not changing? E.G. Phillips had kind of an interesting piece from the YouGov poll to kind of, capsulize this.
Okay.
The national general election poll was Biden 52, Trump 42, and it isn't just that it's a 10-point lead, it's that Biden's over 50. But for those concerned about the 1968 strategy that Trump is taking, here's a question from that poll. Thinking about where you live, how likely do you think it is that violent protests will happen in your neighborhood?
Do I have to participate in it, or it could be anybody?
Well, you can. We can make it fun.
All right.
It's Labor Day. Nobody's listening. Go ahead. What do you think?
I'm going to say next to none.
Very likely is 5%.
5%. Oh, it's even so higher than I thought.
Well, they do poll some people in Kenosha, I suppose.
Oh.
Somewhat likely 14%, not too likely 38, not at all likely 41.
Yeah. Well, is it specifically
79%
super soldiers?
Do not think that violent protests will happen in your neighborhood.
Good.
Okay?
They're probably right.
And compare this to concern about coronavirus.
Oh.
Are you concerned or not concerned about yourself personally or a close family member getting the coronavirus? Remember, we're bringing this home to, personally. Is your house personally going to get set on fire? Are you going to do a gender reveal and set your house on fire like they did in California?
Oh, every day, everywhere. Yeah.
No. Or are you concerned or not concerned about personally or a close family member getting coronavirus? Very concerned, 30%.
Right.
Compared to 5%. Somewhat concerned, 38%.
Yeah.
So over 70% isn't concerned about violent protests, but 70% are concerned about coronavirus. And that there is the election, and just highlights the point I've been trying to make for months now, that coronavirus is the issue in the election, not law and order.
Right. Get off my lawn.
Nobody cares, right? Exactly, get off my lawn. Nobody cares about how much order your lawn is in.
Yeah.
They don't care. It's just not the issue that Trump wants it to be, and so that's been a fail. And that's one of the reasons why the polls really haven't changed all that much. The USC Dornsife poll is out again today. It's a tracker, so it's every day. It's again ticking up in Biden's favor. Harry Enton was analyzing this on CNN and basically said Trump's trailing Biden in the polls is pretty solid, pretty steady, pretty historic, but it's smaller gap than it would appear. And what he's referring to, of course, is the fact that the national polls and the Electoral College may be something different. And so therefore, in the battleground states, and remember why they're called battlegrounds, there may be a difference between how he polls in the battleground states on average, maybe 3 points less than the national polls. But Harry goes on to make the point that unless the national polls are 3 or less, the Electoral College advantage for Republicans really isn't going to kick in. So if it stays at 7.4, which is exactly where it is in 538 right now, that's not going to matter. And why won't people say, okay, well, what happens if it widens, or what happens if it stays the same? Harry just very frankly, Harry frankly says that, look, people aren't interested in the polls widening. They get all upset if the polls tighten, But if they widen, nobody's paying attention.
I guess that's true.
So that's
Harry,
what we talk
Frank,
about.
and Lee. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's happening, so you might as well mention it.
Yeah, but the fact is, it's really not changing. So that is
Yeah.
absolutely
It's
positively
not
worth
happening,
mentioning.
but it could happen. Okay.
Now, here's a great,
Sure.
you may remember this fellow, Omar Weso.
Omar Weso. I
Right?
don't know. Do I?
He wrote
You
a
tell me.
book, and he's been researching for 15 years the effect of protests on the electorate.
It sounds like a good topic.
And you may recall his whole thesis was, it isn't the protests themselves, it's how it's covered. If the protests
Also
are going to
makes
be
sense.
covered by stations calling them riots and showing everybody
Right,
looting
right.
and burning, that's going to affect the public one way, that is to say the way Fox News does it.
Right.
And if it's going to be peaceful protests with the occasional this or that, sympathetic to the protesters, stories focusing on why they're protesting, for example, then it's going to favor the people doing the protests. So that's been his thesis all along. So he writes,
solid
last
enough.
week, following heavy press coverage of vigilante violence at protests,
Yeah.
okay, and get right there, he's already saying it's the vigilantes who are doing the violence. Several analyses relied in part on my research to suggest Biden was likely to take a hit, but a compelling new piece from Greg Sargent shows that that hasn't happened. Why might that be? And the piece is referring to is called The Latest Polling Suggests Trump's Ugliest Campaign Strategy May Be Imploding. And I just read you the YouGov example of how that happens. People are far more concerned about coronavirus and they're not that concerned about violent protests. First, some key numbers from the plumb line. That's Greg Sargent's blog there.
Right.
A CNN poll finds that 58% of Americans say Trump's response to the protests has been more harmful, and only 33% say more helpful. An ABC Ipsos poll finds 55% of Americans say what Trump has said about protests makes the situation worse, and 42% say either it has little effect or made things better, and only 13% say make it better.
Okay.
So Trump is clearly imitating Nixon's 68 campaign strategy and running aggressively as the candidate of law and order. Nonetheless, 55% say Joe Biden would do a better job of keeping the country safe. Why? Well, one largely overlooked detail from 68, we know about the fact that the incumbent was LBJ and the incumbent lost. But one largely overlooked detail from 68 is that 3 candidates were on the ballot. On law and order, Nixon was the moderate. There was Hubert Humphrey on his left, there was segregationist Wallace on his right, and Nixon was able to position himself as the middle moderate. Also, in 68, the American National Election Study asked subjects about the best way to deal with the problem of urban unrest and rioting. The scale ran from 1, correct the problem of poverty and unemployment, to 7, use all available force. And these plots show how black and white subjects rated each candidate. The candidate who rated highest on use force, George Wallace.
Yeah.
So Trump isn't running as Nixon. Trump is running as Wallace, is his point. And Wallace didn't win. There are, of course, other important differences between 60s and today. Then there was significantly more protester violence and state repression. At some events, hundreds of buildings were set on fire. Dozens of citizens were killed by police and National Guard. Remember Kent State, for example. Today, following years of Black Lives Matter protests, the exact timing of Kent State, I don't totally remember whether it was 68 or 69. It doesn't matter. There were things like that going on. And the 68 riots at the Democratic National Convention were fresh in everybody's mind. Today, following years of Black Lives Matter protests, issues of policing and racial justice are taken seriously by a much larger share of mass public. In addition, video of state and vigilante violence offers critical context for activist concerns. For 50-plus years, GOP has owned the law and order topic, yet today, Biden appears to be the candidate of safety. From Lafayette Park to Portland, Trump fails to understand that violent rhetoric and images of crackdowns portray him less as Nixon and more as Bull Connor, the Southern sheriff who fire-hosed protesters, if you don't remember who that was.
I'm good.
For more on my research about protests, see this thread, and he talks about it. For more on why media coverage of protests matters, see this thread over here. Historian Larry Glickman notes another important difference. Nixon was savvy enough to use implicit appeals, while Trump's rhetoric tends to have the subtlety of a foghorn. And for more context on rise of contemporary white power movement, see this thread over here, which he talks about. He really is a subject matter expert. And consistent with prior data, CBS News shows Biden said by more to be trying to calm the situation, while Trump said to be by more trying to encourage fighting. So everybody sees what's going on here.
Okay.
Okay, in that one where Trump had the 10-point lead, calm the situation down, Biden 49, Trump 39, encourage fighting, Biden 30, Trump 47. People aren't totally, Biden only has a 10-point lead on calming the situation down, but encouraging the fighting, Trump has a 17-point lead.
Well, he's way out ahead on that one.
I'm not sure he's trying to calm things down, but I absolutely know he's trying to encourage fighting.
Yeah, so succeeding in terms of how the public views him. We definitely see that you're doing that. Keep it up.
And in terms of public viewing the issue, what's a better way to end the protest?
Oh.
Police reforms, 60% all voters.
Yes.
Punishing protesters, 25% all voters.
Okay.
All right, so, I mean, the public is just not buying into this whole thing. And there's been a whole slew of pundits. Remember, right after the Kenosha situation, right before and during the Republican National Convention especially, oh my gosh, this is going to hurt Biden. Everybody knows this is going to hurt Biden. I can see right here it's going to hurt Biden. Look how it's going to hurt Biden. This always helps Republicans. Everything that happens is going to be good for Trump and John McCain. Actually, right. Trump is good for John McCain. So, you know, and then you get the numbers out. And no, it's the opposite of that. You see the pundits resigning, handing in their pundit cards, saying, I have to pay a special fee because I got this totally wrong. Of course not. They just pretend they didn't say it.
Yeah, that's sort of the way that business works.
It's a great business.
Yeah, it's terrific. And there's always demand for it, regardless, even from the people who are demonstrably wrong. And there's a lot of...
Or in the military when we get back from...
Okay, and speaking of demonstrably wrong, someone pointed out to me yesterday was the 6-month anniversary of Kellyanne Conway and her confrontation saying about the coronavirus, do you not think it's being contained? Apparently not. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Time for us to pick up the story of the military, and I assume that you're going to do the story about the military so good that our heads will spin.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I was trying to look up a quote from Peter Baker, who's the chief White House correspondent, who was talking about how the election is going. And here's the quote from September 5th, which got everybody dumping on him, which they should. And that is, he said, the week that was expected to see the race tighten didn't. Biden leads Trump by anywhere from 7 to 10 points nationally. Fox News polls show Biden ahead by 9 in Arizona, 8 in Wisconsin, 4 in North Carolina, and then 6 in Wisconsin from YouGov, as I just said. But the week that was expected to see the race tighten didn't. Who the hell expected to see the race tighten?
Nobody here.
He says it as if like everybody expected. No, you expected this. Why? Because you basically have a Republican outlook on everything. And you were disappointed and or surprised because it didn't follow your Republican point of view in terms of how things were supposed to happen.
Yes.
Wrong, sir.
You know, he tweets, Trump erases Biden's lead in Texas, moving from a 5-point deficit to a slim 2-point advantage, which is true in the University of Texas Austin poll. But the fact that Trump is only 2 points ahead in Texas and Biden ahead with registered voters is itself remarkable.
Yes, we've just remarked on it.
Yep.
I mean,
so you know, you don't really need to look at everything through a Republican lens. It's simply not
maybe
the
they're
correct
just looking at the wrong
way
place.
to do it.
Peters, I meant it's tightening in Texas.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, I guess he could escape with that one. Yeah, I don't know. He took his lumps there. I didn't see him swinging back. I think he might just be like, yeah, whoops.
So on day 3 of this military story, where Trump was reported by Jeffrey Goldberg to be disparaging members of the military, and specifically John Kelly, right at John Kelly's son's grave site.
Yes, that's the place.
Day 3 of the story that means nothing, because I was assured by people it meant nothing, was opinion. Trump's bad marriage with the military has finally exploded. And I'm counting day 3 because Thursday was day 1. That's the day it came out. It's not 24 hours later, because there's a Thursday story with a dateline. There's a Friday story, a Saturday, a Sunday, and a Monday. So it's a 5-day story the way I count. And on day 3, the story means nothing, except for the fact that there was Trump's bad marriage. Day 1 was the actual story from The Atlantic, which everybody should read. It's not that long. Day 2 was AP, CNN, Washington Post confirming aspects of it.
Right. Okay.
Day 3 was highlighting all the different ways that Trump has said all this stuff publicly.
Right. Out in the open.
Out in the open. Which is why everybody believes it. And you don't need to have, it's anonymous, therefore it didn't happen. He said all this stuff publicly. Of course it happened. And so the public believes it happened. We'll see what happens with day 5. On day 4, Jeffrey Goldberg asked about it, said, not only do I stand by the story, but I think there's more coming out. And so we're waiting on that.
Yeah, which I guess he's
And today's day 5, it's Labor Day. And the thing is, because it was a holiday weekend, there's really nothing to refute it. I mean, it's just like it was one day after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. And, of course, we have the Military Times poll. We have this unbelievably poignant, long tweet thread by Charlotte Clymer about what it's like as a 19-year-old when he was on one of the details to accept the remains of military while he was in the military. I was more nervous than I've ever been in my life about what it was to come next, and as the Black Hawk floated above the earth with my casket team, me being the youngest and most junior, I could only think, what if I messed this up? And that's how it should be in a moment like this. You should be nervous. When you're a new enlisted soldier in an infantry unit, you're treated like you know nothing because you don't. In this moment, despite having done this before, everybody else was nervous too, which is really scary. So we're a casket team, but these aren't caskets. They're transfer cases, rectangular aluminum boxes that bear resemblance to a crate for production equipment, but the dimensions are obvious, and any given civilian would take only a few minutes to realize that we're carrying bodies. So it's called a dignified transfer, not a ceremony, because officials don't want loved ones to feel obligated to be there. But it's as highly choreographed as any ceremony, probably more so. It's done as close to perfection as anything the military does. I was positioned in formation with my casket team. I mean, this is how somebody who was in the military feels about all this stuff.
Yeah, huge.
And that's why it's so poignant. And to just say they're all losers, it's just, it digs deep at a level that simply is not and will not go away. So no, it's not just it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's going to take some time.
So it takes all of 30 to 40 seconds to carry the transfer case and the plane to the mortuary vehicle, but it felt like the longest walk ever each time. The case is carefully placed in the back of the mortuary vehicle. The casket team moves away in formation. I don't know how to describe the feelings after you're done and on your way back to D.C., but it's a mixture of intense relief you didn't screw up and profound sobriety over what you've just done and witnessed. I wouldn't call it a good feeling, and maybe numb pain. And from the outside, the most egalitarian place in America is a military transfer case. They all look exactly the same. An aluminum box covered with an American flag. We don't know their name, rank, race, ethnicity, gender, religion, sexual orientation, none of it. It's all the same. And whatever cruel and unfathomable politics has brought us all to this moment, from the killed service member in the box to those of us carrying it to the occasional elected official who attends to pay respects, there were no politics to be found during a dignified transfer. There are service members around the world involved in caring for our war fatalities, the mortuary specialists, the casket teams, the family liaisons, so many people. I suppose the one thing we all took for granted is that dignity would always be affirmed by our civilian leaders. To those service members who gave everything, I never would have predicted any official let alone a sitting president, would insult fallen service members. I cannot adequately describe my anger at Donald Trump for being so willing to send service members halfway around the world to die on his own behalf and then call them losers for doing so. This coward is unfit for his office and the power it holds. He needs to go. Postscript, I always feel bad when I can't thank everybody who says kind things. When I get angry, I channel it in writing. I'm grateful. It resonated, and yes, it did. So you have all of that happening. There's a Biden ad that has a World War II POW watching Trump's comments about the military and then talking about his own feelings. Yeah, and almost breaks down and says, look, the war was 70 years ago and yesterday. Right. Because you carry that with you always. And says not so kind things about Donald Trump, not deserving to be the commander-in-chief.
Yeah, well, it's all true.
And it is all true. And so, you can take whatever your cynical aspect is of elections and the American people and try to claim that this doesn't matter. And I say, sit on it.
Yeah, even this one, I guess here, the pundits are almost bound to be right because there's nobody who wants to come out and say it's not a problem and you can say this sort of thing about veterans. They all are invested in being shocked. So that's probably a good part of what makes it such a resonant issue and is making it last so long. No pundit is comfortable dismissing it. And
well, there's other aspects of how pundits cover it too. Like, how come little kids in cages didn't get you upset? Yes, how come, right. Puerto Rico never gets any coverage? Well, this is about white dudes.
Yeah. The people who dismiss the other stories are going to be moved by this one. It's true that their priorities
first they came for, yada, yada, yada.
Right. I guess so. No one thought that it's true. I think it's pretty universally felt that everyone, even when they watched, I guess everybody felt the same thing about the John McCain insults too. Like, people, of course, said this is the end of his candidacy. And I suppose there's some residual LOL, YOLO, nothing matters left from that. Watching him survive that. But yeah, I don't think anybody ever thought they would see a president saying, I don't even get the concept of joining the military. What? Really?
Yeah, well, but then you have the pundits who basically make a professional career out of supporting the military or saying kind things about them. You got the Tom Brokaws and the Brian Williams of the world who have been on vacation. Right, and when they get back, what are they going to say about it?
I don't know. Did they wait? Twitter gives them the opportunity to say so. From
vacation. Sometimes you just have to get offline.
Well, I guess so. I don't know. I have no clue what Brian Williams has said. Has Dan Rather? I don't know. Does he count anymore?
Rather said something, but I don't think that Williams has. But again, there are pundits and broadcasters who have just made a career of saying, "I'm very close with the military."
Of course.
Well, fine. What do you got to say about this?
Well, I don't think they're going to shy away.
As we say in Good Will Hunting. How do you like them apples?
Right. Well, maybe that'll help extend the story. They'll come back from vacation and then say
that's what I'm saying. So you look at it and say, of course this has legs. You got people who haven't even weighed in yet, who people are going to look for. Not just the Colonel Jack Jacobs, the subject matter experts, but the posers and the posturers who have a much louder megaphone. What are they going to say?
I don't know.
Right? That doesn't make it better that or more important that somebody like Brian Williams says that. I'm just saying, if you made it your shtick, it's going to have to be something you comment on.
True. All right. Well, the door is open. I don't know. Maybe we wait until after tomorrow. Are they still? I don't know. How long do you wait when you can tweet your response? But okay, some people have put their phones away for the weekend or whatever. But I don't know. I think you would have picked it up for that. But whatever. Okay, right. We'll wait and see.
Our friend from Canada, Brian Monroe, tweets on a different topic, which is also going to dominate everything. I crossed back into a state of denial from the Atlantic, coming back into the U.S. during a pandemic. At the Canada-U.S. border, I encountered a study in contrast, which is true. And again, what people have to remember, if they haven't remembered already, if you're a parent, you haven't forgotten, you've got colleges which are opening up and closing down. You've got colleges who are attempting to tell 19 and 20-year-olds that they shouldn't be partying, which is really stupid, not only because they're going to, but it completely ignores the fact that if you want to look at it from a sociologic or a business point of view, These aren't parties. This is networking, building up networks so that you have contacts in later life. It's half the reason you go to college. It isn't the stupid course that you took on Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. It's the friends you made along the way, because, by the way, they're going to help you get to where you need to go.
That is important.
Right? And if you shut that down, you're just, no, it's not going to work. They're going to do this behind your back. Of course they are.
Yeah, well, that seems obvious. Even if you don't think
and it is obvious, and it's happening. And so the pandemic is in the news. It's in the local news, even if it's not covered every night with the first lead story, because all this other stuff is going on. And then you have the grade school situation, the primary school situation, where schools are opening and closing, and parents, again, not just parents of the college kids who are out of sight and therefore worry, but worrying about the actual, what do I do with my 9-year-old?
Right.
And how do I go to work and all that sort of stuff. And that's happening now. And so the pandemic is going to be the major story, and the models are starting to predict a surge of pandemic cases along with deaths over the next couple of months. Whether they're correct or not correct, they're going to be partially correct. And it isn't just a question of whether or not you wear your mask. People are starting to lag on that, or whether or not you're going to, shut the country down. We're clearly not going to do that before the election, whether we should or shouldn't. But the pandemic is going to surge, and then Trump's going to make noises about having a vaccine, and he's going to announce it before the election. We all know he's going to do that, which doesn't mean it'll be available, because all the scientists are pushing back and saying, we're not doing this. We're going to do it the right way, and too bad for you. And Trump will say, yes, but I spoke to them, and I'm announcing today that there's going to be something really soon.
Yes, probably with an explosion, a vaccine reveal party that starts a forest fire.
Right, but the thing is, nobody believes him, and the polls are pretty clear on that as well.
Yeah, well.
So it's not going to help him.
Okay.
The John Durham, Bill Barr.
Already forgetting about that. Yeah.
Reveal, which is going to start a forest fire. Nobody's going to believe them there either.
Yeah.
Because it's just none of this October surprise stuff is going to be working. The real October surprise isn't just the friends you made along the way. It's going to be the fact that the pandemic is still smoldering. It's not going away. And, if anything, the October surprise may be that in October, John Kelly says, yeah, this really happened.
Surprise.
Prolonging the story even more.
I guess that's a possibility. I don't know what he can come up with. I don't want to speculate on it because he's liable to do anything. But, yeah, there's not a whole lot of maneuvering
He's not
room.
a good person. Don't forget, he was the one that was perfectly happy with the kids in cages while he was in charge.
Yeah.
But, this is something different. So we'll see.
All right. Is the October surprise a Halloween candy buyback?
That could be.
That's it. We'll give you, and it's the $1,200 that we were all waiting on for coronavirus relief. We'll pay you $1,200 for your now useless package of Kit Kats.
Right.
All right.
Oh, a reminder from Stuart French. Remember that piece I told you that 1/3 of new registrants to vote are under the age of 25?
Yes.
They're not millennials. Millennials are getting old.
Oh,
They're
okay.
Zoomers.
Yes, right. All right. True. We should differentiate between them. So, like, not avocado toast, and you can't blame them for not having a house yet because they're 18.
They're not boomers, and they're not millennials. Okay. They're not Gen X lost people who thought Reagan was good. They're none of those. Right?
What about
get
TikTok?
Some new blood in there and
I
make
don't
it
understand.
count.
Yeah. Okay. Are these TikTok people? Not TikTok people? I don't understand that.
Yeah, they're TikTok people.
Okay,
absolutely.
all right, good. I saw some awful TikTok activity over the weekend. I don't blame them for that.
Yeah,
I think
but TikTok ruined Tulsa, so you got to love TikTok.
Yeah, all right, true. And they did well with that. Although that's American TikTok fans of Korean bands that ruined everything. So very narrow slice of people, you would think, but
K-pop, absolutely.
Yeah. Remember that. Okay, and we had that also gave us the timer, the 40-day. Ticker on the shutdown of Herman Cain's ticker, I guess. It was 40 days from rally to announcement of his death. And I was walking outside yesterday and remembered that I forgot how long ago the Republican National Convention actually was. What are we, like 2 weeks out from that?
Yeah, it's the end of August in the 20s there. I have to keep looking it up because, it didn't make a mark.
Exactly.
Oh, hey, don't you remember how wonderful Melania's speech was and that was going to change everything?
Mm-hmm.
There's another pundit that ought to retire.
Oh, was there
people who said that? Oh my God, Lara Trump's was so normal, and you know she didn't scream at people the way Guilfoyle did.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, oh my God, it's going to change everything. Melania, look at Melania. She's the first lady. Oh my God.
It turns out that Guilfoyle got every word of praise Trump could muster. He thought that was the speech of the century, possibly even better than his own.
Right. Anyway, I'm ending this segment with just a reminder again from Harry Enton. Biden's lead over Trump has since January been steadier than any presidential candidates in any campaign since 1940. It's only rivaled by Obama 2012, and unlike that campaign, the GOP candidate this year is pretty never leading in any polling.
Okay.
So I'll leave you with that. So I'm doing a polls only. I'm not looking at fundamentals because I don't know how to interpret fundamentals this year. It's just impossible. You don't know how it's going to play. But we do know polling, and we do know that when people say, oh, this matters, well, you look at the polling and see whether it does or whether it doesn't. So I'm waiting for military comments and see how that plays in the polling. Now, again, if you have a 10-point lead, you don't have to have this issue make it a 12-point lead. And if it remains a 10-point lead, you can't point to it and say, see, it made no difference.
Yeah,
everybody knows, according to Peter Baker, it's supposed to tighten. What if it doesn't? What are you going to attribute that to?
That's a springboard for later discussion, right? If the conventional wisdom is everybody knows it's going to tighten and it never tightens, you might be
even though we told you it probably wouldn't.
Right, well, that's true. Ignore that part.
Ignore that part for the moment. Let's just claim that this thing is the thing that made it not tighten.
Everybody knows it. Yeah. Well, if they say everybody knows it's supposed to tighten and it doesn't tighten, you could say your fundamentals are off. The fundamental is things tighten. It's the economy stupid and the race tightens. Well, the race isn't tightening. What does that mean? It means
exactly
you're
right.
outside of the box.
It means maybe the fundamentals don't mean what you think it means.
Yeah.
You keep saying fundamental, that word. Right. You keep saying that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. And you Zoomers can go look it up.
Yes. And they might.
By the way, did you see what Ben Wickler over in Wisconsin is doing?
Yes. I think I know exactly what you mean. They have a cast reunion of The Princess Bride as a fundraiser for Wisconsin Democrats. I was wondering why? How did that happen? And now you've told me.
Because somebody asked, and they said, as you wish.
Yeah. And Ted Cruz is frustrated and angry because apparently, I don't know, he likes princess movies. And nothing wrong with that. I mean, he also apparently likes, porn and whatever, but okay. Both. There's room for both in a lot of lives, I would assume. And, he was very upset about it and is criticizing the cast and saying, basically now calling for a conservative boycott of The Princess Bride, which I think would be pretty easy to pull off. But
that's pretty funny. Anyway, so that's it. That's the story. Remember, it's Labor Day. Hug a union. If I had to pick one, I'd pick your local teachers union, but you pick your own.
Yeah, okay.
You can do the Bricklayers Union in honor of our friend Jake McIntyre.
Yeah, if they'll let you hug them, sure.
Or be careful when you hug a bricklayer. They're pretty strong.
They can throw bricks.
Yeah, they can. But hug a union and, remember them on Labor Day because that's the whole deal. So I'll leave that with you, and then we'll be back on Wednesday during the regular working week.
Okay.
And, again, Wednesday is when the MU Law poll will be out. For Wisconsin, the gold standard poll. Mm-hmm. MU Sunday Law with Charles Franklin, the pollster, is to Wisconsin, as J. Ann Seltzer is to Iowa. And we'll see how that goes.
Okay. That's some analogy. Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Take care. I'll talk to you.
You do the same. Go maybe grill some burgers or something. Have a nice day off, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Well, we'll hear you on Wednesday. You know how that goes. Oh, it's just a saying. Okay. Want to round up the rest of the world in a few minutes or so, and then we'll take a short break and get our feet back underneath us. Let's see. A couple of shorter hits, I guess, before maybe we dive into one of the longer stories. Here's a interesting-ish one, just in terms of what factor, but it tells you, I guess, how far gone. Maybe this is a good one for the fundamentals file. Like, how could there be fundamentals if... or what does it even mean to say, to discuss things in terms of fundamentals if the incumbent president of the United States is running around saying, who are losers? American veterans. Boy, do they suck or what? I mean, that's hard to get around. Here's another one I guess you probably at the time didn't imagine you would see unless you were one of those people who knew inherently that alt-right figures and others who might find themselves involved in the wacky and possibly deadly Boogaloo movement would do just about anything in order to accommodate and finance their stupid cosplay lifestyle. How much anything are we talking about? Here I have the report from, where are we talking about here? Is this the Charlotte News and Observer? Boogaloo member who entered Raleigh restaurant. So is it a Raleigh News and Observer or is it the Charlotte? I think it's the Charlotte News and Observer, but they would cover Raleigh for you. Boogaloo member who entered Raleigh restaurant, and it's barely a restaurant, it's Subway, with a gun. More on that later. Now accused in Hamas plot. Hamas, like, you know, the Middle Eastern Hamas. And brings to mind, of course, well, we'll get we'll get to what it brings to mind. First, we'll accredit the story. It's Ashad Hajela and Travis Long. And the two of them put this story together. Photos of members of an anti-government group carrying long guns, a pipe wrench, and an inert rocket launcher. Rocket launcher. Yes, inert, true, but rocket launcher. Walked into the photos of them in a Subway restaurant. Fair enough, it is a restaurant. In Raleigh, went viral in May. Now, one of these people has been accused of trying to sell weapons to undercover federal agents. And that's always a dumb thing to do. And as it turns out, one of the people arrested is the one that was carrying the inert rocket launcher, which I guess suggests that maybe he has ERT rocket launchers at home to sell to Hamas. And what could go wrong with selling rocket launchers to Hamas? Benjamin Ryan Teeter. No relation to the Teeter of Harris Teeter, as far as I know, but we could check into that. Benjamin Ryan Teeter, 22 years old, which makes him a Zoomer, right? From Hampstead, North Carolina. And Michael Robert Solomon, 30, who's, I guess, maybe more on the millennial side at this point, from New Brighton, Minnesota. How'd they get together? I don't know. But they were both, well, here's how they got together recently. They were both arrested and charged with conspiring and attempting to provide material support to Hamas, a Palestinian terrorist group. Yeah, kind of problematic. But it brings me to mind of the story, was it last election, maybe? Maybe two presidential elections ago? Does everybody remember the Friends of Hamas setup? There was, and I gotta look it up, some Republican prankster who attempted to send, and I guess we ought to take note of who it was, because it popped up as I was searching. Was it, in fact, Ben Shapiro who did this thing? The intellectual leading light of the right these days, who essentially, I don't know whether they went through all the trouble of actually forming such a thing and putting together, I don't know, they cut checks and there it is, and they sent them to Chuck Hagel, I guess, of all people, a group called Friends of Hamas. The idea being we're going to mail a check to somebody, to Democrats or to Democrat-leaning Republicans, like, I guess, Chuck Hagel, because he had served in the Obama administration, right? Sending them Friends of Hamas checks and see who cashes them and who doesn't, and it's going to be a big gotcha. So let's see. And this is an article from... here's a recent one, actually, from Mother Jones, last year. And just give you a little bit more background here. 6 years ago, I accidentally started a viral rumor about Friends of Hamas, and it's back, says Dan Friedman. It was back, and this time it was being used to attack an Elizabeth Warren staffer, interestingly enough. In 2013, I guess this is when it first came around, I accidentally started a rumor involving Hamas and the Obama administration. 6 years later, a version of the rumor is back in the right-wing media. It began after I'd heard scuttlebutt on Capitol Hill that Chuck Hagel, who had recently been nominated by President Barack Obama as defense secretary, might have given paid speeches to controversial foreign groups. Hagel was already under attack by some conservatives for his allegedly anti-Israel views. I asked around on the Hill about this, suggesting sarcastically to a Republican Senate aide that maybe Hagel had addressed a group called Friends of Hamas. I'd made this name up. It was supposed to sound so absurd and controversial that it was obviously fake. But through a game of Capitol Hill telephone, my invention reached Ben Shapiro, then a writer for the conservative news site Breitbart, in case you forgot how he got his start. The day after my conversation, Shapiro wrote an article stating that Senate sources told him that Hagel had received foreign funding from a group purportedly called Friends of Hamas. Did Shapiro think that an organization named after the Gaza terror group really existed with no internet footprint and paid a former senator for a secret speech? It's not clear he cared. He hadn't checked further. The story, as reported, is correct, he told me then. Whether the information I was given by the source is correct, I'm not sure. How do you like that trick? That's a pretty good one. And then he goes on to say, Dan says, I documented my role in starting this rumor in a story later for the New York Daily News. Anyway, this willful misunderstanding, dormant for 6 years, sprang back to life on Monday. This was, of course, back in 2019, when the Washington Free Beacon, a conservative publication, ran a hit piece on Max Berger, a staffer on the presidential campaign of Senator Elizabeth Warren. On February 20th, 2013, the same day my story ran, Berger tweeted, confession, I would totally be friends with Hamas. Okay. The Free Beacon article presented Berger's tweet as an example of his work and as an anti-Israel activist, alongside his role in starting a Jewish group opposed to Israeli occupation of the West Bank and Gaza and his various criticisms of Israel's policies. Okay, so you could see where he's coming from, but I guess this brought it back. Anyway, a long-standing issue, and now we have found the Friends of Hamas, and they're them. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And, wow. Well, anyway, I guess I misremembered exactly what that whole controversy / made up baloney was actually about. Although, at any rate, I found that rather interesting just to get a refresher on the background of it. Back to the actual story that sparked this was photos of the members of the Boogaloo group that showed up in a fine dining establishment in Raleigh. It was Subway. They were there for the $5 footlongs, I assume, piled high with weapons. Anyway, so these guys, two of them anyway, Benjamin Teeter and Michael Solomon, arrested and charged with conspiring and attempting to provide material support to Hamas, a Palestinian terrorist group. Why? Michael Solomon and Benjamin Teeter proclaimed themselves to be members of the Boogaloo Boys. Remember that they spelled it B-O-I-S, Boogaloo Boys. A group that espouses a violent ideology and an objective to overthrow the government, said U.S. Attorney Erica H. McDonald in a news release. Solomon and Teeter appeared in U.S. District Court on Friday via teleconference, because it's too dangerous, coronavirus, etc., etc. They both were appointed federal defenders, according to the Associated Press, which is hilarious also, because they are accused of wanting to overthrow the United States government, but out of the goodness of our hearts. And in dedication to principles of justice and law and order, etc., at least for white guys, the federal government they sought to overthrow is going to give them free lawyers to try to get them off the hook for trying to overthrow the government and fund Hamas or help Hamas with material support. The term Boogaloo, of course, references a supposedly impending second civil war in the United States. You know the provenance of that, and is associated with violent uprisings against the government, the news release stated. So far, it's all true. Solomon and Teeter said they were part of a subgroup of Boogaloo Boys, you see, called, this is why they take it so seriously, called remember, Boogaloo Boys are the Mujahideen, which is, of course, tremendously respectful of their Muslim brothers in arms or something. It's all a big joke to them. The Mujahideen. This is according to an affidavit in the case. I like the accent I'm getting. The affidavit. It's an affidavit that you hide after a Passover meal, and the kids try to find it. All right, a small segment of the listening audience gets that one. I would say about 60%, though. Anyway, according to the documents, the two men are accused of attempting to sell gun parts to Hamas and expressing their desire to be, quote, mercenaries to earn money to support the Boogaloo Boys or Mujahideen movement. I don't know how much money Hamas is interested in paying these two idiots to be mercenaries for Hamas. Hamas has got a fairly steady supply of trained armed fighters, I think, compared, say, to the actual Boogaloo Boys. Anyway, so here we go. The documents also state Teeter and Solomon discussed destroying a northern Minnesota courthouse, killing U.S. politicians, and inciting violence by attacking law enforcement and white supremacist group members at protests in Minneapolis. How do you like that? Attacking law enforcement and white supremacist group members at the protest in Minneapolis. And yes, it's true. The Boogaloo thing, I mean, it's not monolithic. It's not anything lithic. It's a bunch of idiots, true, but they're tightly knit on online message boards, and they do show up at these things, and they do pose a significant threat. But part of the game is, of course, talking themselves up. But in addition, it's important to note that they are not universally united behind one strain of alt-right white supremacist opposition to the government. There's a segment of them that just fancy themselves some sort of anarcho-terrorist segment, and the tolerant side. That is to say, we aren't white supremacists, but we would like to kill a lot of people anyway, so they're just as dangerous. I guess here's a good example of it. The article is illustrated here with a photo of Teeter, who is affiliated with the Facebook group, it says in the caption, Blue Igloo, marches near the state capitol in downtown Raleigh in May of 2020, and he is carrying what appears to be a gay pride flag emblazoned with the Gadsden flag graphics, the rattlesnake and the "Don't Tread on Me" inscription imposed over the rainbow flag. And I don't know what we're supposed to make of this, but it's not something that you would ordinarily see the more traditional, let's say, white supremacist Boogaloo Boys carrying. But this is, I guess, a mark of his independence, you see. But it doesn't help him any when he's been arrested for trying to provide material support to Hamas. I don't know where that fits in with the gay pride thing. And of course, it might have been that he used it ironically somehow, or to throw off suspicion in some way about what he was doing. Anyway, those were their plans: destroying a northern Minnesota courthouse, killing U.S. politicians, inciting violence by attacking both law enforcement and white supremacist group members at a protest in Minneapolis. I don't know if any of it came together or not. The affidavit states that Teeter and Solomon also talked about raiding the headquarters of a white supremacist organization in North Carolina. A lot of plans, not a whole lot of action. Again, just to list it, aspirationally, attack a northern Minnesota courthouse. I'm not certain which one or why, but I guess that has to do with the fact that the other one, Solomon, comes from Minnesota, so he must have a grievance about this courthouse is where I had to go to pay my speeding ticket or whatever. Let's destroy it. But this is the aspiration. Destroying a courthouse. Oh, I lost their list here. Destroying a courthouse, assassinating U.S. politicians, disrupting protests and attacking both law enforcement and white supremacists. And was there more? Oh, yes. And they were going to raid the headquarters, if there even is one, of a white supremacist organization in North Carolina. What they did get done was they went to Subway. So I don't know what you're supposed to make of that. But the point is they wanted to be mercenaries. And Subway could add mercenary sauce to your sandwich, I guess. And so they decided that's where they would go. The FBI began an investigation into the Boogaloo Boys in late May after protests broke out against the death of a black man, George Floyd, at the hands of police in Minneapolis. So they had cause to be on the ground in Minneapolis. A witness said Solomon was carrying firearms through residential Minneapolis neighborhoods and that Solomon and Teeter possessed firearms and substantial quantities of ammunition, the news release stated. They probably did. The affidavit quoted Solomon with this, quote, "Here's the thing. I want to take down 20 senators while they're playing effing baseball, right? I don't want to blow up a courthouse." He doesn't? He said, I thought he did. "I want to murder a bunch of U.S. politicians." Don't say that, really, ever. I am just quoting this nutcase. But okay, that's what he decided to say. That's the statement I want to make. That's exactly the statement you don't want to make. But I guess he didn't know he was being taped or someone was taking notes or whatever. I don't know how we got from "I don't want to blow up a courthouse" to an affidavit saying he did want to blow up a courthouse. Maybe he wanted to destroy it by other means. I don't know. Seems kind of odd. Interesting, too, that he had plans to kill senators, and I don't know whether he meant exclusively senators, but while they were playing baseball. Now, of course, the House does have a annual baseball game between the Republicans and Democrats, and there was, in recent memory, an attack at one of the practices for the game where Steve Scalise famously was shot, among others, but he was the most seriously wounded. He's made a beautiful use of his second chance at life so far, becoming really just one of the most loathsome Trump apologists around, and just a, all-around low-life scumbag and liar. But whatever, he'll have to answer for that eventually. I just thought he was going to have to answer for it sooner, and turns out he got a reprieve. But this guy I guess he wants to launch another such attack. I don't know if the senators participate in the game, whether they can join the House team or not. I don't think they have their own game, but he's clearly a confused individual, and this is probably the least of his mix-ups. Anyway, Solomon and Teeter believed that an undercover FBI agent was, in fact, a member of Hamas, because they go to Subway all the time. In audio recordings, Subway has nothing to do with this indictment, by the way. Don't get upset, Subway people. In audio recordings, they said they shared anti-U.S. sentiment with Hamas, the affidavit said. They said they were willing to be mercenaries employed by Hamas. I don't think that happens for Americans. And that they could make untraceable weapons, the news release stated. I mean, I've read about that too. You can buy semi-automatic assault rifle pieces that you can use to assemble your own gun, and if you build it at home, you're not legally obligated to stamp them with serial numbers the way a factory-made gun of any kind would be. And so those are known as, they like to call them ghost guns, because that's cooler than saying just regular untraceable, no serial number guns. And also, that's not really all that important, quite honestly, to Hamas. That's the sort of thing that, I guess idiots and pretenders and wannabes and cosplayers think is important to terrorists. But really, once you've sort of signed on to the terrorism plot, the fact that your gun can be traced, I mean, I suppose it lessens the chance that you'll be caught before you get to launch your attack. And for Boogaloo boys like this, I guess that's a major concern, because they're always dreaming of their attacks and hardly ever actually launching them. They are, however, lunching during them or prior to them. That they've got down pat. So they said they would be willing to be mercenaries employed by Hamas, as though Hamas, you imagine Hamas fighters looking at these guys and saying, yeah, we should do that. We should hire them. We don't really get paid, but maybe we could pay them because they're really experts, willing to be mercenaries. All right. Well, anyway, they on July 30th, they sold and negotiated a price for gun parts with a person they believed to be a senior member of Hamas, but who was actually an undercover FBI employee. Teeter and Solomon said they hoped the weapons would be used by Hamas to attack Israeli and U.S. soldiers, according to the news release. that'll put them in good standing with the rest of the right. Pretty nice. And I guess really, they're not very smart guys, obviously. Like, to me, I would think that, well, there's one sentence left. We might as well read it. In case you want to know, a hearing for Teeter and Solomon is set for September 9th. That's Wednesday. Via video conference. They will be held by the United States Marshal until the hearing. And, whenever the marshals are involved, it's pretty serious, especially if it's just the Marshal of the Supreme Court, which doesn't really exist. And anyway, going on, or at least in the role that it was once rumored to exist in. Okay, so here they are under arrest. I guess my last comment on it was, knowing what they know, that they know how to get gun parts, and what do they call them? I think the uppers and receivers that you can buy online, pretty much, and then use them to assemble assault weapons. They must know. They know where they're getting them. You can go online and order them, and they get mailed to your house. And I guess strikes 1, 2, and 3 altogether here are that they believe that Hamas has no idea that you can order gun parts online, and that they would need these two guys who hang out at Subway and dream of blowing up or of not blowing up U.S. courthouses, but of killing 20 senators at a time, are the only ones who have been able to discover how the internet, which you could get even in Gaza, would mail you these things. Okay, and I'm sure that they must have thought, well, the part manufacturers probably aren't going to ship us the parts in Gaza. It's very hard to get gun parts to Gaza. They're trying all the time, believe me, but there's like this whole army, you might have heard of Israel, and Navy, dedicated to trying to stop that from happening. Sometimes they're better at it than others, but so surely they must have thought, well, maybe we could send an agent to the United States. That's possible. But why the agent would arrive in the United States and say, what I really need is these two yahoos in the subway to order the parts for me and then give them to me, and then I'll get them to Gaza. And they might have thought, I don't know. I'm sure that in these guys' minds, the idea was, well, I'm from Hamas, but that gives me, in all likelihood, a name that's quite obviously Arabic, and it's going to raise eyebrows if I order thousands and thousands of parts for assault rifles. And it might. It very well may. But then I'm sure they also know that you could pick a different name or a American sounding name and order the parts and get them just fine. But, these mistakes are going to be made by people who convince themselves that they're somehow indispensable to Hamas. And then also you should hire us. Not only should you pay us to buy these parts for you, you should also hire us to do your fighting for you. This is where their heads are at. Okay, so you don't need to know any more about how dumb Boogaloo Boys are. I think that illustrates it quite nicely. Let's see. The other, I guess, big story of the day is the Louis DeJoy story. And we've touched on that a little bit, but I think I want to read through the Washington Post roundup of all of this information. Louis, and another huge long headline. Let's see what this one says. Louis DeJoy's rise as a GOP fundraiser was powered by contributions from company workers who were later reimbursed, former employers say. So it's a complicated scheme that requires 3 lines in the headline. Of course, it's illegal to do that. We'll just say at the outset, you can't come up with straw contributors and reimburse them. That's supposed to be illegal all by itself. And the fact that you would coerce your company's workers into doing it is a problem by itself. That's part 2 of all this. Then that you would reimburse them with corporate funds, because that also is illegal. You can't use corporate funds to support candidates. So problem number 3 there. Problem number 4, layered on top of all this, of course, is I don't think that they gave their money to Trump. I think they basically, a lot of it went to Tom Tillis, who won relatively narrowly in North Carolina and helped tilt the balance of power in the Senate. And of course, how many terrible things happened because Republicans held power in the Senate that might have been avoided otherwise. So, a lot of the judges now sitting, the worst judges ever nominated and forced through by the Republicans and Trump in the last couple of years, owe their places on the bench to the cheating that Louis DeJoy did on behalf of the election of Tom Tillis. And then, of course, Louis DeJoy only comes to the Trump administration's attention for placement in the job of Postmaster General, from which position he's attempting to try to cheat, to influence and capture the 2020 presidential election. All of that only happens, he only becomes Postmaster General because they've noticed his fundraising prowess, and they only notice his fundraising prowess because it's artificially inflated with illegal donations. You see the chain reaction that's happening here? I'm sure it's all displayed and laid out more in more organized fashion by our authors, Aaron Davis, Amy Gardner, and John Swain, who write, Louis DeJoy's prolific fundraising campaign fundraising, which helped position him as a top Republican power broker in North Carolina and ultimately as head of the U.S. Postal Service, was bolstered for more than a decade by a practice that left many employees feeling pressured to make political contributions to GOP candidates, money DeJoy later reimbursed through bonuses, former employees say. 5 people who worked for DeJoy's former business, New Breed Logistics, say they were urged by DeJoy's aides or by the chief executive himself to write checks and attend fundraisers at his 15,000 square foot gated mansion beside a Greensboro, North Carolina golf club. There, events for Republicans running for the White House and Congress routinely fetched $100,000 or more apiece. 2 other employees familiar with New Breed's financial and payroll systems said DeJoy would instruct that bonus payments to staffers be boosted to help defray the cost of their contributions, an arrangement that would be unlawful, insofar as it is unlawful. You know what they're saying here. Lewis was a national fundraiser for the Republican Party. He asked employees for money. We gave him the money, and then he reciprocated by giving us big bonuses, said David Young, DeJoy's longtime director of human resources, who had access to payroll records at New Breed from the late 1990s to 2013 and is now retired. When we got our bonuses, let's just say they were bigger. They exceeded expectations, and that covered the tax and everything else. Another former employee with knowledge of the process described a similar series of events, saying DeJoy orchestrated additional compensation for employees who had made political contributions, instructing managers to award bonuses to specific individuals. And you see, no matter how you slice this thing, it ends up being illegal, whether it's just straight, well, whether you care about these candidates or not, if you contribute the money, I'm just asking you to be a pass-through. You give $1,000 and I'll give you a $1,000 bonus to make up for it. Although it sounds like he gave him a $2,000 bonus, not only to make up for the $1,000 that they lost, but also to, give them an extra boost in their income on top of that and cover the extra taxes that they would have to pay on the size of the $2,000 bonus, so that they don't lose any money, which is, it's nice that he's actually approaching it in a way that doesn't cost these employees money, but it's not a universal thing. He didn't leverage it to that level where every employee was required to do it, but that only actually ends up making it worse. I mean, if I give you a $2,000 bonus in exchange for a $1,000 donation to the candidate, that ends up being fine. In the end, in the final analysis, there's still more money in your pocket at the end, which is why people would agree to do it. But those bonuses didn't go to everyone. He didn't extort that money from everyone. So the other way of looking at that is, in this company, if you give money to my preferred candidates, you will get ahead. You will get a larger bonus than everybody else. You will make more money than everybody else in this company. And that, too, by itself, is basically another count in the charge here. That's illegal all by itself. So, where were we? Another employee described a similar series of events. Yeah, right. Then instructing managers to award bonus to specific individuals, people who were willing to participate in the scheme and lay money out initially on behalf of Republicans so that Louis DeJoy would look like a bigger deal in the Republican Party. So he would ask employees to make contributions at the same time that he would say, "I'll get it back to you down the road," said the former employee, who, like others interviewed for this report, spoke on condition of anonymity out of fear of retribution from DeJoy. They won't get their birthday cards in the mail, I guess, is the retribution. In response to a series of detailed questions from the Washington Post, Monty Hagler, Hagler, a spokesman for DeJoy, said the former New Breed chief executive was not aware that any employees had felt pressured to make donations. Sure. After repeatedly being asked, Hagler did not directly address the assertions that DeJoy reimbursed workers for making contributions, pointing to a statement in which he said DeJoy, quote, believes that he has always followed campaign fundraising laws and regulations. He no longer believes that either, I'm sure. Hagler said DeJoy sought and received legal advice from a former general counsel for the Federal Election Commission to ensure that he, New Breed Logistics, and any person affiliated with New Breed fully complied with any and all laws. Mr. DeJoy believes that all campaign fundraising laws and regulations should be complied with in all respects. He didn't, and I'm sure he didn't. He either didn't get that advice from a general counsel of any kind or a former general counsel from the Federal Elections Commission, or that person was equally corrupt, and maybe the advice was how to avoid getting caught in doing this illegal thing. It doesn't say. But okay, that's the spin. The spokesperson also added that DeJoy encouraged employees and family members to be active in their communities, schools, churches, civic groups, sporting events, and the politics that governs our nation. Nice and neat. Mr. DeJoy was never notified by the New Breed employees referenced by the Washington Post of any pressure they might have felt to make a political contribution, and he regrets if any employee felt uncomfortable for any reason, he added. He's a good spokesperson. He's lying, but decent job of it. Didn't give us any more ammunition. A Washington Post analysis of federal and state campaign finance records found a pattern of extensive donations by New Breed employees to Republican candidates with the same amount often given by multiple people on the same day. Between 2000 and 2014, 124 individuals who worked for the company together gave more than $1 million to federal and state Republican candidates. Many had not previously made political donations and have not made any since leaving the company, public records show. During the same period, 9 employees gave a combined $700 to Democrats. I guess that would be the people who actually had some contribution they wanted to make out of their, motivated by their own consciences, to candidates they actually supported. 9 employees together, $700, $1 million to Republicans. What's going on, right? Although it can be permissible to encourage employees to make donations, reimbursing them for those contributions is a violation of both federal election laws, for which he'll be pardoned anyway, but also importantly, North Carolina law. That is where the problem may arise. Known as straw donor schemes, the practice allows donors to evade individual contribution limits and obscures the true source of money used to influence elections. In other words, Louis DeJoy, very rich man, could have given the $1 million himself to Republican candidates, but 1, didn't want to, and 2, if he wanted to funnel it all to one race, he would have run up against the contribution limits. So he sought to disperse it among several people who together could give $1 million and not raise suspicion, except, guess what? They raised suspicion because they did it sloppily on top of it all. Such federal regulations carry a 5-year statute of limitations. There's no statute of limitations in North Carolina for felonies, including campaign finance violations. So another potential problem solved there. The former employees who spoke to the Post all described donations that they gave between 2003 and 2014, the year New Breed was acquired by Connecticut-based company XPO Logistics. And I did see the great song parody out there by, Rocky Mountain... Was it Mike? Is it? Oh boy, I've lost track of that. But great song parody idea anyway out there. Said his favorite Mary Poppins song was XPO Logistics. DeJoy remained at XPO briefly in a leadership role then retired at the end of 2015. By a year after the sale, several new breed employees who had stayed on with XPO were giving significantly smaller political contributions, and many stopped making them altogether, campaign finance records show. And that's because DeJoy wasn't around to coerce them anymore, even though he swears he never did it. In a statement, XPO spokesman Joe Checkler said the company stays out of politics, but our employees have the same individual right as anyone else to support candidates of their choosing in their free time, and when they do so, we expect they adhere strictly to the rules. Well, it did solve itself after DeJoy left. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I want to continue with this extraordinarily long article, but a lot of good detail in here. But just for some context in all of this, I did want to point out that the genius elections law practitioner Mark Elias was pointing to this over the weekend. Just so if you don't take my word for how important it is, we're going to invest this time in this story. Mark Elias says, of course, it too says is a must read. These allegations are of serious federal, maybe outside of the statute of limitations now, serious federal and state criminal conduct that is routinely prosecuted, in case you wanted to know about whether it's just one of those laws everyone ignores. If true, he must resign or be replaced immediately. I mean, we all felt that way anyway, even regardless of this story. But now this should be the icing on the cake, not that, he'll actually do anything about it. Also, I think somebody pointed out this is the same crime for which Dinesh D'Souza was prosecuted and convicted. Of course, the president then commuted his sentence as well. I am sure that DeJoy figured he would be pardoned on any federal charges, although I think he probably thought he would skate on the statute of limitations at this point. But yeah, once again, reminder, he can't, we say he can't. The president can't pardon state charges, but who knows what he might attempt to do anyway, or just claim, yes, I can. I don't know if anyone will believe it, but I don't put it past him to try. There are a number of things that I think are obviously outside of the power of the presidency that even Trump acknowledges are outside the power of the presidency, but he might try to do anyway. Let's continue on with this one before, I guess at some point we'll jump out and hit one other big story, plus a few other fun details I want to try and cram in before we go. Let's see. The accounts of DeJoy's former employees, which have not previously been reported, come as his brief tenure so far at the helm of the U.S. Postal Service has been marked by tumult, to say the least. After his appointment in May, he swiftly instituted changes he said were aimed at cutting costs, leading to a reduction of overtime and limits on mail trips that postal carriers said created backlogs across the country. Democrats have accused DeJoy, who has personally given more than $1 million to Trump Victory, the joint fundraising vehicle of the president's re-election campaign and the Republican Party, of seeking to hobble the Postal Service because of the president's antipathy to voting by mail. As states have expanded access to mail voting because of the coronavirus pandemic, Trump has repeatedly attacked the practice and claimed without evidence that it will lead to rampant fraud. The evidence in his mind is, I plan to engage in rampant fraud, and so I know there will be fraud. The Postal Service chief emphasized to House lawmakers last month that the agency will prioritize election mail. Responding to questions about his fundraising, DeJoy scoffed. Yes, I am a Republican. I give a lot of money to Republicans. but he pushed back fiercely on accusations that he was seeking to undermine the November vote. "I am not engaged in sabotaging the election," DeJoy said. "We will do everything in our power and structure to deliver the ballots on time." I think he's lying, but that's what he said. During the testimony, DeJoy was asked by Representative Jim Cooper of Tennessee, Democrat, in case you had any doubts. Many people do. If he had repaid executives for making donations to the Trump campaign. "That is an outrageous claim, sir, and I resent it. The answer is no," DeJoy responded angrily. DeJoy had retired from XPO management by 2016. He hosted Trump at his Greensboro estate, known locally as The Castle, because he's so subtle, for a birthday party and fundraiser in June of 2016. Earlier this year, DeJoy was leading fundraising for the Republican National Convention in Charlotte when he was selected by the Postal Service's Board of Governors, with prompting from the Trump administration, in May. DeJoy was not originally on a list of prospective candidates for the job. Robert M. Duncan, chairman of the USPS Board of Governors, told House lawmakers in testimony last month. Duncan, also a longtime Republican fundraiser, said he submitted DeJoy's name as a candidate after his interest or availability became known to me. Other articles have suggested that that information came from Steve Mnuchin and that the prompting for that may have come from the Trump campaign people. But we haven't traced that storyline with our reading yet. But I believe that that storyline exists in reporting out there. Next up, a new section called A Pattern of Requests. Multiple New Breed employees said DeJoy's ascent in Republican politics was powered in part by his ability to multiply his fundraising through his company, describing him as a chief executive who was single-minded in his focus on increasing his influence in the GOP, not running his company and making it the best it could be and returning investment to stakeholders across the spectrum, from shareholders and other investors to employees who put their heart and soul into building the company, but using the company and extracting as much from it as he could in order to build his profile in the Republican Party. That was clearly his dream, and that was the end use he had in mind for New Breed logistics. In his office, DeJoy prominently displayed pictures of himself with former President George W. Bush, Senator John McCain, who's a loser and a sucker, who died in 2018, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, former vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin, and others, according to former employees. Several employees said DeJoy reveled in the access his fundraising afforded him. At a local PGA tournament sponsored by New Breed, he played alongside top North Carolina Republicans such as then Governor Pat McCrory and Senator Richard Burr, descendant of the original trader Aaron Burr. According to schedules posted online, he always wanted to be the guy in the golf cart with the politicians, said one person who worked with him and who attended the tournaments. As DeJoy's profile as a Republican bundler grew, his wife, Aldona Wos, won presidential and gubernatorial appointments, first as an ambassador to Estonia in 2004, and then as head of North Carolina's Health and Human Services Agency in 2013. Trump appointed her in May of 2017 to serve on the President's Commission on White House Fellowships, and earlier this year he nominated her to be ambassador to Canada. Don't accept her credentials, Canada. DeJoy and trusted aides at the company made clear that he wanted employees to support his endeavors through emails inviting employees to fundraisers, follow-up calls, and visits to staffers' desks, many said. He would put pressure on the executives over each of the areas to go to their employees and give contributions, one former employee said. While some employees told the Post that they were happy to make the donations, others said they felt little choice, saying DeJoy had a heavy-handed demeanor and a reputation for angering easily. Good combination with Trump, right? Plant managers at New Breed said they received strongly worded admonitions from superiors that they should give money when DeJoy was holding fundraisers. A program manager said that when he was handed his first company bonus, a New Breed vice president told him he should buy a ticket to DeJoy's next fundraiser. Several employees said New Breed often distributed large bonuses of 5 figures or higher. Bonuses did not usually correlate with the exact amount of political contributions. That's smart. It's good cover. But were large enough to account for both performance payments and the donations, according to two people with knowledge of company finances. Also good cover. 5 former employees said DeJoy's executive assistant, Heather Clark, personally called senior staffers checking on whether executives were coming to fundraisers and collecting checks for candidates. Clark, who now works alongside DeJoy at the Postal Service as his chief of staff, hint, hint, did not respond to repeated requests for comment. Phone messages left with Clark's husband were returned Friday by Hagler, who said she would have no comment. Clark was among several non-executive employees who gave substantial political donations, public records show. She alone contributed $47,000 from 2002 to 2014. Clark has continued to donate since then, but at about half the annual rate as she did when she worked at New Breed. Another longtime senior official in DeJoy's company, Joe Hawk, H-A-U-C-K. We'll say Hawk, I don't know. Also routinely contacted company employees urging them to contribute, former workers said. In an interview, he denied that the company reimbursed New Breed employees for political contributions. He said he never received any bonuses for that purpose, nor was he offered any. That's illegal. You can't do that, said Hawk, who did it, who was vice president for sales, marketing, and communications when the company was sold. Hawk did acknowledge approaching employees and asking them to contribute, but disputed that he pressured anyone. Does he still work at, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see whether people who are still at, say, XPO could find themselves in trouble with the company or in legal trouble. It'd be interesting to know whether XPO is, I don't think they would be on the hook for any of these things, but they might have some case to press against New Breed for not accurately representing that they were involved in this practice during the purchase process. Of course, they wouldn't represent that they were involved in it because it was illegal and they knew it was illegal, but that would be part of the problem, right? Is the sale price of New Breed to XPO a fair one, given that it came with the hidden baggage of massive illegalities that would reach up to the highest levels of government? Well, interesting. It'll take about 15 years to resolve that one. Let's see. Hawk did acknowledge approaching employees and asking them to contribute, but denied he pressured anyone, or disputed it anyway. I created a list of people that had indicated that they were interested, for whatever reason. And whenever there was an event coming up, I would let them know about the event, and they would either say, yeah, I want to participate, or no, I don't, he said, and then they'd fire you. Hawk said he sometimes did collect checks for candidates in the office, but only because some employees happened to have their checkbooks on them. Another manager also said he was not aware of employees being reimbursed, but acknowledged that workers were asked to make the donations. Now, you'll recall, by the way, juxtapose that with the statement up there earlier that said, our employees have the same rights as anybody else to make contributions on their own time. Contrast that with, I sometimes collected the checks in the office, or I sometimes visited employees at their desks to remind them about fundraisers. And yes, that was the atmosphere. We used the leverage we had at work as bosses to do this, which is part of what makes it illegal. Let's see. Another manager also said he was not aware of employees being reimbursed, but acknowledged that workers were asked to make donations. William Church, a former New Breed vice president, said he handed out many bonuses to his employees in the company's aerospace division and never had knowledge of such payments being connected with political contributions. He said bonus targets in his division were rigid and well established. That doesn't really matter, but okay. Church, who donated over $21,000 to Republican candidates while at New Breed and said he received substantial bonuses, said he never felt pressured to make the contributions and was never reimbursed for them. Ask my wife. Boy, she would have loved that, Church said, never questioning why his bonuses were larger than anybody else's because he's entitled to them. One big, giant, fat white guy. I don't know whether he's fat or not. It's unfair, but I don't know. I feel like he's a big fat cheater. How about that in the rhetorical sense? Let's see. Asked, I bet I'm right though. Asked whether he believed employees could have felt pressure to attend fundraisers, Church responded, now, what's in somebody's heart when they're doing it? When the CEO invites you to one of these things and they think, oh, should I do that? I don't know. Steve Moore, who took a job as a plant manager of a New Breed facility in Bolingbrook, Illinois in 2007, said he felt pressured to contribute just a few months into his job. DeJoy sent managers an email announcing a fundraiser event at his house for former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, then a candidate for president. So remember, he's sitting in Bolingbrook, Illinois. He's now invited to a fundraiser in North Carolina, and let's see what happens. Moore said his manager, Philip Meyer, soon followed up, telling him that making a contribution was highly recommended, even if he would not attend. I took that to mean my job is on the line here, or things won't go smooth for me here at New Breed if I didn't contribute, Moore said in an interview. He donated $250. I didn't really agree with what was going on, he said. Moore said he was terminated in 2008 after a dispute with his supervisors. In a text message, Meyer declined to comment. One of the biggest beneficiaries of donations from New Breed employees has been Republican Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina, whose campaign committee has collected nearly $300,000 from people at the company in 2014, campaign finance records show. When asked for comment on the accounts of employees who said they were pressured to donate to DeJoy's favored candidates, Andrew Romeo, a spokesman for Tillis's campaign, said in an email, "Neither Senator Tillis nor our campaign has knowledge of these findings." Then a discussion of the pressure that people felt. Maybe we'll read a little bit of this one too before jumping over to another story. DeJoy did not always seem destined for a life as an influential GOP power broker. As a young man in New York working at his father's trucking business, DeJoy donated to Democrats, including the party's 1988 presidential nominee Michael Dukakis, according to federal campaign finance filings. After his marriage to Wos, a physician born in Poland who emigrated to New York as a child, DeJoy followed her into conservative politics. Under DeJoy, New Breed expanded from trucking to logistics, managing delivery and returns of the first iPhones sold by Verizon, airplane parts for Boeing, and Disney merchandise, including shipments of magic bands, employees said. I don't know why that's important, but okay. Gives some context, I guess. By the late 1990s, as the family business flourished, thanks in part to contracts with the U.S. Postal Service, wink, wink, DeJoy moved New Breed to North Carolina and closer to the work it was doing, repositioning mail crates, folding mail bags, and other logistical work that the government had begun to outsource. The move provided new political opportunities for the couple. Wos embraced North Carolina Republican politics and by the early 2000s was stepping into national campaigns. She helped lead fundraising efforts in the state for Elizabeth Dole's 2002 Senate run and then for Bush's re-election campaign. According to campaign statements and news articles from the time, DeJoy began to marshal his resources to support Republican candidates as well. On one day in February 2002, DeJoy donated $50,000 to a Republican Party fund supporting Bush's campaign. According to Federal Election Commission records, another $10,000 came from DeJoy's brother, Michael, who worked then for New Breed in New York. Another 10 New Breed employees also chipped in $1,000 that day to Bush and another $900 or $1,000 each to Dole, campaign finance data show. In response to a request to Wos for comment, Hagler said, "Dr. Wos has her own career and she was not involved with New Breed logistics." Well, what about with cheating? Young, the retired director of human resources, said it was during the 2004 Bush re-election campaign that he saw DeJoy begin to take advantage of his power as CEO to move money for politics. No one ever was forced to or lost a job because they didn't, but if people contributed, their raises and bonuses were bumped up to accommodate that, said Young, who gave more than $19,000 in donations while he worked at New Breed. Ted Lejeune, a New Breed project manager in North Carolina, said he made a $500 contribution to the Bush campaign in November of 2003 after DeJoy took him aside for a discussion in a conference room about donating. Bad news. I was of the same political orientation, so it was not coerced in any way, and there was no quid pro quo, Lejeune said in an interview. Lejeune has said he has not donated to any political campaigns since then. So, that tells you a little something, too. In 2002, DeJoy and New Breed employees contributed more than $87,000 to support Dole, and before the 2004 presidential election, more than $121,000 to Bush. Wos was named a Bush Ranger, an honorary term for those who delivered at least $200,000 for the Texans' re-election bid in a recess appointment before the election. Recess appointment. Look at that. Bush appointed her ambassador to Estonia, a post she held for 2 years. Freddie Ford, a spokesman for Bush, declined to comment Wos did not respond to a request for comment about her appointment. And it goes on and on. There's a bit more here and some other interesting material that I think I will sort through off air, and maybe we'll see if anything really exciting jumps out that we will share tomorrow. I recommend it to you. It'll only take you another 10 minutes or so to read through, but there's a couple other stories that we ought to get to. One I'm reminded of, and I didn't even really have it on the rotation yet for today, but we'll just make a quick mention of it because of Walsh's appointment as an ambassador. You likely picked up the story yesterday of what Trump did with his time rather than visiting the cemeteries when he was in France for the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. So having declined to go to the cemetery because the rain might have messed up his hair, he found himself with an additional 6 hours on his schedule. And apparently he was staying in the residence of the American ambassador to France, a palatial estate in a fancy part of Paris, and wandered through the place. And apparently this embassy, beautiful place, and a place where the embassy staff routinely kept various works of art on display, and they routinely gave tours of the ambassador's residence to people, I guess, to not only view the inside of the building, but to take in some of the works of art as well. So I guess that's what Trump decided to do. And along the way, on his tour, formal or otherwise, of the residence, he apparently admired the art a great deal and began to point things out, and basically then gave the order that those things that he liked should be packed up and leave with him, and not just be shipped back to the White House for his personal enjoyment, but should actually be boxed up and put on Air Force One with him as he left. He wanted to make sure that they made it there. I guess he didn't trust the Postal Service even then to handle those things. And, of course, that tells you pretty much all you need to know about Donald Trump and where his head is in all of this. But there are some additional details. But just to point out, it is true that that would be something that they could do, a president could do. It would be within his power. The works of art on display in the ambassador's residence are the property of the United States government, and the president can order them transferred. It's not a legal issue per se, or at least not yet. Maybe later it becomes a legal issue, and you'll see why. But this is something actually that's routinely available to presidents and top leadership in Congress, by the way, is that they can, if they wish, decorate their offices with artworks and other items on loan from the various government institutions, the Smithsonian, the Portrait Gallery, et cetera, et cetera. Apparently, though, Trump picked out an interesting mix of things: a portrait of Benjamin Franklin, an early ambassador to France, of course, and a bust of Franklin as well. And then a bunch of figurines. Poseidon came to mind earlier today, too. A bunch of, look like maybe silver figurines of figures from Greek mythology that he decided he wanted to take along with him as well. Had them all packed up and put on Air Force One and absconded with them back to Washington, has put them on display there. And then, as it turns out, in a truly Trumpian move, it turns out that the portrait and bust are both copies, not the original works of art, which is fine. I'm sure they're very interesting, and they make for nice knickknacks and decorations around the office, especially if you have something nice to decorate like the Oval Office. Although what's funny about it is that the originals are apparently in the possession of the museum systems of the federal government and were, right down the block from the White House all this time, but he was unaware of them because, he would never go and check that out or even have any interest in decorating his office beyond fabric swatches. But anyway, he could have ordered at any time for the original to be brought there. Now, once he found out that the portrait was a copy, he, in fact, did order the original to be moved from the Portrait Gallery to the White House. And then as for the bust, I don't know whether the bust also was, it was intimated that it also was in the possession of the federal government nearby. But I guess in order to make it look like he wasn't a chump and an idiot and hadn't been fooled because he has no taste in anything, he pronounced, once he was told that the bust, too, was a copy, he says, "It's all right, I like the fake better than the original." So it was said that he was joking and all of that, but of course he'd never seen the original, so there was no basis for him to say such a thing. And he's an idiot. And remember, we read at one point that at some point he acquired some sort of, I don't know if he knew it was a fake, but I think, what was it, like a Renoir that he put on his plane. He decorated the interior of his plane with it, and he would show it off to everybody. And that we read the report of some reporter who was it the golf reporter even, who had been brought on board to fly to one of the golf courses, and he showed it and said it's an original. And the guy's like, "I know it's not an original because I have written a report just recently about having viewed it at the opening of an exhibit, I think in Chicago or something." You know, so he loves doing this stuff and buying into these fakes and believing they're real. I mean, remember, he displays fake Time Man of the Year magazine covers in all of his golf clubs too. So then he just convinces himself that they're not fakes. Apparently the figurines of the mythological figures also sort of fakes, but interesting fakes. And they were faked up, I guess the article says, in the early 20th century by a sculptor who hoped to pass them off as 16th and 17th century originals, but never was able to do so. But that's an interesting story all by itself, and that, I guess, made them more valuable. Anyway, they're apparently now on the mantelpiece over the fireplace in the Oval Office because Trump is cheesy and likes gaudy, stupid-looking crap. So there's that story. And I'll have to grab that one for you. I thought that was parked in pocket here somewhere. The other big story of the day that we now are pretty much out of time for, but I don't know whether we'll get to it tomorrow or not, but maybe feels like a subject that Joan might want to spend some time on. Anyway, this one is interesting. I just wanted to give you the heads up on the story, and maybe we'll throw a one-liner out there for you. The New York Times reporting under this headline, "How Trump Draws on Campaign Funds to Pay Legal Bills." Subheader here, "As he has done with other aspects of the presidency, Donald J. Trump has redefined the practice in ways that have unsettled even some Republicans." And I can't remember who made the comment on Twitter, but saying, yeah, there's going to be some, we're reaching a point where there's going to be some uncomfortable questions among Republicans. Where is the money to support Republican candidates across the country, and indeed to pay for advertisements for the presidential reelection effort as well? Apparently, the Trump campaign going dark in several states where they might otherwise have been expected to spend lots of money. In fact, they withdrew their buys in some states, I guess, in order to preserve cash. And if the big billionaire businessman can't come up with the money, that should be very telling all by itself. More interesting to me, though, is the long story short of this article, apparently, is that Trump basically ordered that the bills for mounting his defense in his impeachment, the bills incurred in defending the campaign against charges that that the candidate incited violence against protesters at those campaign rallies last year, various of the other battles he's fighting in court to keep his tax returns secret, et cetera, that all of that is being paid for by money diverted from the campaign and the Republican National Committee, which I don't think is necessarily illegal all by itself, although I'll let other people comment on that. But it has had the effect of draining the coffers. And remember, that money wasn't solely for his reelection, although I'm sure he views it that way. And I'm sure he never understood the lines between different accounts anyway. These are all within if I can make people spend it, then it's mine. And I guess just basically I wanted to throw this challenge out there again to the people who thought that this was still the case. Remind me again why impeachment wasn't worth it. Tell me again about how impeachment wasn't worth it because we knew he wasn't going to be removed from office. Apparently it has had the effect of bankrupting his campaign at a critical moment and bankrupting the campaigns of candidates for office all around the country who thought that they could count on Republican National Committee money backing them up if they couldn't raise the money themselves. That's a bad bet all by itself for other reasons, but there you have it. It appears to have bankrupted or nearly, effectively at the moment anyway, bankrupted the campaign. And Trump, of course, has no intention of parting with any of his millions of dollars that he might still have left or have stolen from the campaign directly in order to do this thing. So you're all going to have to cough it up again. So there you go, suckers and losers. Should have impeached him twice. Should have impeached him for everything. Keep impeaching him. Keep doing it now. I guess that Democrats would say, well, we never had any idea that he was going to do something this stupid. Well, you probably should have, even if you wouldn't have guessed this particular thing. So maybe it was off your radar, but there you have it. Was impeachment worth it? It appears to be, all by itself, just for this reason alone. We'll get to that and more as we get to things. Come back tomorrow in the regular work week and bring you the latest stories. In the meantime, Justice Putnam batting cleanup once again with all the stories that we have missed today. Let's see what he's got on tap for you. Mark Zuckerberg in the news, and we missed that. Too focused on imposing his vision to acknowledge the website's threat to national security. Also, the Oregon GOP had weeks to file its voter statement, but it won't appear on the general election voter pamphlet because they submitted it 29 seconds too late. I gotta love those rules.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Okay, the House Intel Chair accused William Barr of lying when he said China posed a bigger threat to November's U.S. election than Russia. And the Navajo Nation demanded an investigation into Fort Hood after one of its members became the 28th soldier from the base to die this year. What is going on at Fort Hood? Good question. We'll follow up with that next.